My name's Mike. My past isn't something I'm particularly proud of. When I was little, my parents divorced, and I was raised by my mom, single-parented. In middle school, I wasn't exactly well-behaved. I'd hang out with my friends and get picked up by the local police, and my mom was constantly being called to the school. I was what you'd call a rebel. I hardly studied, and I didn't even bother with high school entrance exams. Why bother with school when it's not mandatory, I thought, and chose to drop out despite everyone's objections. I didn't think I was doing anything wrong, but it took my mom collapsing to realize that even thinking that was a mistake. "Mom, are you okay?" Maybe it was the years of stress. She worked from dawn till dusk to make ends meet, and it seemed like the physical and mental strain had finally broken her down. I called an ambulance in a panic and rode with her. The doctor said she was lucky a few days in the hospital would do. What an idiot I've been. I regretted it so much then. Not pursuing further education or a job, just goofing around. I was such a fool. I couldn't stop crying as I watched my mom sleep in her hospital bed. The next day, I went to visit her. When I opened the door to her room, she looked at me and smiled. "You came to see me." "Mom, I'm so sorry for all the trouble I've caused you." "What are you talking about? I don't feel troubled at all. I just want you to be happy and healthy." Seeing her smile, I knew I had to make it up to her somehow. I started job hunting right away, attending numerous interviews day after day. But the world isn't so forgiving. Everywhere I went, they asked about my education. Man, being only a middle school graduate is such a disadvantage. I was close to giving up when I couldn't land a job. Then, I saw a help wanted sign at a local cake shop and decided to give it a shot. It was the shop where I used to go with my mom to buy cakes when I was a kid. The owner, Jack, whom I hadn't seen in a while, greeted me with a smile. "Wow, Mike, you've grown so much. Mike, can you start tomorrow?" "What? Aren't we going to have an interview?" I was surprised, and Jack just laughed. "All right then, let's confirm. Are you ready to make cakes with me?" Yes, I am." "Great, then let's shake on it." Jack extended his hand with a smile. "Thank you." I was taken aback but firmly shook his hand. That's when I swore to myself to give it my all. Later, under Jack's guidance, I started learning how to make cakes. Carrying ingredients, whipping up loads of cream. I was initially surprised at how tough the behind-the-scenes work was. "You have a good knack for this, you'll make a fine pastry chef." Those words from Jack made me even more determined. I worked till I was exhausted every day, even practicing cake making at home. I think I studied harder than ever before in my life. Surprisingly, I liked this job. There was a lot to learn, but it didn't feel hard at all. It was the first time learning felt so fun. My mom, who had been discharged from the hospital, was quietly cheering me on. A few months later, Jack called me in for a talk, and I entered the back room nervously. "You're a fast learner and a joy to teach. How about aiming for the next step? Our cake shop's work isn't just store operations. We have a partnership with a nearby wedding venue, providing cakes for weddings. How about taking on that challenge?" "Yes, I'd be thrilled to. Thank you for the opportunity." I gratefully accepted the offer. When I told my mom, she was really happy. "You've worked hard, it'll be fine. I'm rooting for you." The next day, I headed to the wedding venue right away. It seemed to be a well-known place. I'll be working with them now. I need to make a good first impression. I knocked on the kitchen door nervously. Inside, there was a guy about my age. Maybe he's a pastry chef. "Nice to meet you. I'm starting here today. My name's Mike. Looking forward to working with you." I greeted him energetically, believing first impressions are key, but he just glanced sideways and responded nonchalantly, "Yeah, sure. Nice to meet you." As I stood there puzzled by his casual response, a man named James, who turned out to be the manager, came in. "Good morning. You must be Mike. I'm looking forward to working with you." Afterward, I received a brief overview of the venue and greeted the other staff. James said, "If you have any questions, feel free to ask." So during lunch, I immediately inquired about the man from earlier. "That's Keith, the head pastry chef here. He trained abroad and has won several competitions. He's really an incredible pastry chef." "Indeed, that's impressive. An elite craftsman." I was happy to have a skilled senior, but returning from lunch, Keith glanced at me. That look, I felt unwelcome. Unfortunately, my suspicion seemed correct, as once the work started, I was mostly given menial tasks. "Hey, whip up the cream. Even a small-town cake shop can do that much, right? Just slice the fruit for now. Simple, right? I'll do the decorative cuts. Don't do anything unnecessary. We're different from those basic small-town cake shops." He spoke in a curt manner, looking down on me. Eventually, I was even stuck with the dishwashing. When I tried to help out, thinking ahead, I ended up getting scolded. Maybe it's understandable, given he's a world-trained head pastry chef and I'm just a self-taught pastry chef from a small-town shop. But I've been trained by Jack. I wanted to do more. Even though I thought that, I couldn't say anything, and it felt wrong, especially since the other staff were so nice. James noticed and cared, but I didn't want to cause any unnecessary worry. For Jack, who trusted me with this job, I had no choice but to work my hardest. Then one day, a new couple came to the venue. I just happened to run into them in front of the building when I was returning from an errand. As I greeted them and was about to leave, the woman called out, "Wait, are you Mike?" "Excuse me." I turned around in surprise, and she looked just as astonished. "Yep, it's you, Mike. Do you remember me? We were in the same middle school class. I'm Mandy," she said, smiling. I recognized that smile. In middle school, while other classmates avoided me because I was scary, Mandy was one of the few who treated me normally. She'd scold me sometimes, but always talk to me with a smile. For me, who didn't enjoy school, her smile was a rare comfort. Mandy, who I saw after so long, had become a beautiful lady. "I remember you. It's been a while." "It sure has. Do you work here? You seem to have grown up a lot." "Well, a lot has happened, and you're here because..." I glanced at the man standing next to her. A slightly older, calm-looking man politely nodded. "Yes, we're getting married. We came to look at venues, but if you work here, maybe this is the place for us." "I'm flattered, but make sure you look around first. It's a big decision, after all." "I know. Well, we can't really take our time looking around," Mandy said as she touched her growing belly. "So that's what it is." "Congratulations." "Thank you. Well then, we'll go and check it out," she said and waved goodbye, walking in with her husband. The two of them looked truly happy. It made me feel joyous too. I hope they decide to have their wedding here. It would give me the motivation to work even harder. Thinking this, I headed back to the kitchen, where Keith and James were talking. "What? Turn down that kind of customer, please. That's not really an option. Why should I, of all people, accept such a low-budget job? It's ridiculous. People who can afford more shouldn't even be getting married." It seemed they were arguing about Mandy's wedding. Her family apparently wasn't very well off. With her pregnancy and the desire for a modest ceremony with just close family, they really wanted to stick to a low-budget plan. "Keith, we do have low-budget options in our plans, right? The client isn't asking for anything unreasonable. It's not something to be turned down. I don't want to do such cheap work," Keith insisted, arms crossed. James looked troubled, his shoulders drooping. Hearing this, I couldn't help to ask, "This might be my chance. Could I take on that job?" Both of them looked at me, wide-eyed, but Keith quickly frowned. "Don't be ridiculous. You couldn't possibly make a wedding cake." I've made large decorative cakes before, and I've learned a lot from Keith here. I may not have any awards, but that's why I can work on a budget without feeling bad. Please let me do it. I promise to give it my all. No way, absolutely not. I won't let a small-town cake shop like yours tarnish this venue's reputation. But Keith, you don't want to do it, right? I do. I'll take full responsibility. Really, we should just turn down such low-budget clients. I can't just let that comment go. James suddenly raised his voice. Both of us were surprised. It was a tone we never expected from the usually mild-mannered him. This venue should be accessible to all couples wishing to marry. I want every couple to feel happy here. Keith was taken aback by his determination. Then James firmly grasped my hand. Mike, please, I'm counting on you. Let's work together to make it a great ceremony. Yes, Keith grumbled discontentedly, but I was entrusted with making the wedding cake. Since then, I spent every night researching, striving to meet all their requests while considering the budget. Jack lent me the kitchen for practice and supported me as much as he could, even amidst his busy schedule. After numerous trials, I created what I believe to be the best cake ever, pouring all my gratitude towards Mandy into it. Wow, this is looking great. Jack's approval boosted my confidence, and I couldn't wait for the big day. On the day of the wedding, the kitchen was bustling, but I carefully and lovingly prepared the cake. Keith remained holed up in his office. He was still adamant about not helping with a low-budget ceremony. I never thought he'd be that kind of person. James shook his head in disbelief. The ceremony went smoothly, and the reception was just as flawless. Mandy, smiling happily in her wedding dress next to her husband, looked incredibly beautiful. The intimate setting made for a warm and friendly atmosphere. As my turn approached, I grew increasingly nervous. And now, the entrance of the wedding cake. With the master of ceremonies announcement, I carried the cake to the bride and groom. The cake sparkled under the spotlights, eliciting a chorus of wows from the audience. I decorated it with numerous sugar confections of characters from a theme park the couple loved, and arranged edible flowers and cream to resemble a flower field. The cake was surrounded by ribbons made of chocolate and candy crafts. The sugar confections were a labor of love. Wow, it's cute. I could hear cheerful voices from around the room. The bride and groom were also surprised by the cake. What a lovely cake, thank you. You're truly a skilled pastry chef, she said, tears in her eyes. Thank you, it's so beautiful. The groom smiled. Guests eagerly came to take pictures of the cake. The cake-cutting ceremony was a big success. Though the groom looked a bit overwhelmed when he got a mouthful of sugar confections along with the cake. Returning to the kitchen, I was greeted with a round of applause from James and the other staff. Amazing job, Mike. Everyone really liked it. Thank you. It's all thanks to your help, James. James and I exchanged a firm handshake, feeling an unprecedented sense of accomplishment. I was so glad to see everyone happy. Later, 2 letters arrived at the venue. One was a thank you letter from Mandy. The wedding was a memorable experience, especially the cake. I want to thank all the staff who put together such a wonderful ceremony, and the pastry chef who made the cake. The other letter was from the boss of the groom who attended the wedding. He was impressed by the cake and showed it to his daughter who was planning her wedding. She wanted the same cake for her wedding. I want the best cake for my daughter, the letter stated, an outright offer. Mike, you did it. James was even more excited than I was. See, I told you had a knack for this, Jack said, seemingly proud when I told him. After that, word seemed to spread, and I started receiving a lot of wedding cake requests. Eventually, I was trusted with making all the cakes for the venue, and Keith had left before I realized it. I heard later that his overbearing attitude had made him unpopular among the staff, and everyone was relieved when he finally left. James seems to have been promoted since then. He's in a commanding position in the office, but he still wants to be involved in the field even after his promotion. So the subordinates are having a tough time. The new manager was grumbling a bit in the kitchen. As for me, I received an offer saying, "We'd love for you to become the exclusive pastry chef in place of Keith," but I chose the path of the small-town cake shop. I enjoyed working at the venue, but I wanted to keep working with Jack, who had nurtured me. I also wanted to give back to Jack, who had always supported me behind the scenes. James was a bit disappointed, but he smiled and accepted my decision, respecting the path I had chosen. "Are you sure about this, Mike? You could have stayed working at the wedding venue permanently." Jack said it was a waste, but his wife told me he's actually really happy about it. Now, I am applying the skills and knowledge I gained at the venue to create new cakes, and they are well received by customers. And with the earnings, I gifted my mom a vacation. Seeing her son succeed in his work, she was very happy. "You were such a rascal, but you've grown up to be such a fine young man. I'm so proud," she said with tears in her eyes. It was a heartwarming moment for me as well. Later, Mandy became a regular customer, often coming to buy cakes with her family. "I'm counting on you for my daughter's wedding cake too." As she said this, she cradled a little girl in her arms. A few months after the wedding, a lively little girl was born. I smiled back warmly as her small eyes gazed at me. Of course, I'd be delighted. Life is what you make of it, and you can always start over, no matter what happens. That's what I've come to realize from my own experience.